Welcome to the OShow. I'm Laura Babock, and it's time for another OShow scandal panel with Keith Leslie and Mart. And I got to say, there's always so much going on that we could talk about. But when there's something that really gets people in Ontario upset, that's when I know it's time to bring these guys in to look at what's happening with the Ford government. Because, you know, some things just get to you viscerally. They just make you angry. And that's how I felt, and many of you felt, especially on social media, when you saw the latest propaganda from the Ford government. It's gaslighting, and it's painful for people who are on the front lines of so many of our crises. See ads like that and they think, what Ontario am I living in? What premier is that? Because that ain't the guy who's full of scandal. What was your reaction when you saw the latest Ford, look how great Ontario is and how great a folksy guy I am ad hit your social media this weekend?
It's almost laughable, especially when you see him, hi, it's Doug returning your call, like he's still the premier that everyone can call on his cell phone. That's not what 14 million Ontario people need. They don't need a premier who's available to every one of them on the cell phone. That's absolutely not it. But he's busy, 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 don't you know? And when I don't get it right, I hear from the people. That's all he said. He doesn't. I correct myself, or I have to reverse myself many, many times. It's as with the last one, I found this one to be easily mockable. And I hope the opposition parties get right to it. But come on, what do you, as you say, you're trying to gaslight us into saying Ontario is just a jiggity boo. I mean, everything's just going along fine. Ignore all those homeless encampments, in towns and cities, not just the big cities, in towns and cities across this province. Ignore the fact that your ER don't have a heart attack on Friday to Sunday. Okay, we just don't have the staff to keep your ER open or your emergency department. All these things, you just ignore all that because things are pretty darn good in Ontario right now. I mean, yeah, it just seems the wrong time to be putting this out. And I'm not sure, again, the timing. The election's a long way off to be putting out these feel good. It's just because he's taking a lot of heat on so many issues that they're just trying to, make him look as folksy as he can because he's a populist premier.
What was your take on the ad and your feeling to Keith's point about the timing? Do you think they're seeing numbers about his personal popularity that they either think they have to lean into and push advantage or they need to deal with to fix?
It's Milton by-election. This is all about the Milton by-election. The timing is all about the Milton by-election. This is a litmus test for the Ford government. With Bonnie Crombie, their attacks on Bonnie Crombie all over the radio and television. A Milton by-election coming up. If they lose that seat, that is a big blow to the PC party, a big blow to their election chances. So I think they're very, very nervous. And hence why we saw the rollout of the, it's all here in Ontario ad, and that, and then this PC party funded ad making Doug look like, the everyman. I make mistakes, I own up to them, blah, blah, blah. I think it's all about that. And then you see today, what do they announce today? More GO service to Milton. Yay, again. More. I mean, come on. This is part of an elaborate rollout. And I think that people will, it reminds me a little bit of the ad that Wynn did when they tried to redo the runner ad when her popularity was slumping, and they tried to reshoot it and repackage it. It worked really good the first time. Yeah. When she ran in 2015, didn't work so great the second time. And I think that's what I saw in this Ford ad. I saw a lot of that kind of like similar style of trying to, position the leader as everyday person, as somebody who, gets up in the morning, goes to work. And, but it's difficult when you run ads like that, when you are mired in so many scandals and issues. Who's going to be convinced by that other than the partisans who are just ready to go down with the ship no matter what? It gives the opposition and everybody else an opportunity to mock, to make fun of, and to really get more angry at the government.
Yeah, so let me just push back on that a little bit. Not that I disagree with you, but I just want to play this out a little bit strategically. So there are those of us who are obsessed with politics of all kind. I can't forget what Kathleen Wynne called us on the OShow a while ago. But there's those of us who are in that bubble, right? And so we're tracking all of it. We're aware of the depth and breadth of the scandals and the audacity of them and how sickening they are and how sick the people of Ontario are getting because of his mismanagement of healthcare and his threats to the environment. But there are people out there who don't pay attention at the level that
Yeah.
we do and are susceptible to this kind of reframing the premier as that folksy dude because they kind of check out between elections, right? And so, I mean, that there must be an audience that is susceptible to this gaslighting by Premier Ford, or they wouldn't be investing in it.
I don't at all blame them for doing this. They're in trouble, and they've got to rebrand this guy,
I,
and they've got to bring him back to 2018.
I question if he's actually in that much trouble. They seem to be staying, between 38 and 42% in the
Yeah.
polls, and 40% is a solid majority in this province. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're that. I think while they're trying to frame Bonnie Crombie as, every time the words carbon tax comes out of their mouth, it's just followed by Bonnie Crombie as they're trying to frame the new Liberal leader. I think they're just, burnishing Ford's popularity, if you will. I mean, what's the old thing? Don't pee in my ear and tell me it's raining. And that's exactly what those ads seem to say to me for the most part. But to the other point, if you haven't had to wait outside a closed yard, had to drive, 100 kilometers to find another one, or if your kid isn't one suffering with autism or some of these other chronic issues that we see, if you just are, not engaged except for, you tune into debates before the election and then you vote, you're probably not aware. And these ads can be very effective with a lot of voters.
The voters tire of governments. You have the Liberals who have been in power since 2015, so they're people are tired of that. You're now going to have the Conservative Party in power in Ontario for 8 years. That's about the time when Ontario typically flicks the switch and goes back to the other party.
Great Canadian Rick Mercer once said that Canadians view their governments like the box of baking soda at the back of the fridge. You put it in there, you forget about it until it stinks, then you throw it out.
So let's get into another scandal because there's been a couple of them. The Ontario place. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but wasn't there a court ruling that it kind of went in favor of the challenge to Ontario Place? I mean, that is not dead in the water yet, is it? That challenge?
No, the court allowed the Ontario Place for All, the group that's trying to fight the government on this. They allowed them to say, no, come on, we have to have an environmental assessment of the West Island. And the court ruled that was a reasonable thing to have. Mm-hmm. So how that's going to play out at this point is unclear. But the group obviously feels very emboldened by this. And they also put out a study this week. They had some economists look over a business plan. Basically, they don't have very many figures, I don't think, that they can actually work with. None of us have seen them for this 95-year lease for Thermate. But they say that there's no way it could be profitable and would require huge investments of taxpayers' dollars for the first 5 to 6 years of operation, maybe more. So I think there's a lot more to be played out on this whole Ontario Place thing, but the construction is going apace. So how much we'll be able to save, or how much can be saved or turned back or scaled back? Can it be that the Science Center ends up staying in Don Mills and that gets repurposed as a part of a larger Ontario? Who knows? But the fight is absolutely ongoing, and the Ford government lost the first round in court. Doesn't mean they're going to lose the next one, but they lost the first one.
Mark, let me just go to you for a sec. I don't know if you saw the recent OShow. We put out a lot last week, but with Councillor Maureen Wilson, and she talked about how Ford's new budget was a clear and present danger to the future of Ontario, and I encourage our viewers of this show to go back and watch that one. But one of the things she focused in on was around the environmental stuff, around, because she's on the board of Hamilton Conservation Authority, just how fast and loose they're playing with these environmental protections and protocols, and how does that impact the 413 scandal, which I kind of tie into the Greenbelt.
This has been 6 years of tearing down all of the protections and rules that we have for this phony plan to build 150,000 houses a year. Over the last 2 years, they haven't even built 200. So, they're just clearing the pathway, and it's like under the red tape. It's all red tape, right? Red tape is this moniker that politicians use. And there is red tape. Absolutely, there is some unnecessary red tape, but there's also very necessary red tape. And what the Ford government has done, and what this government has done, is they have aimed to do, and this reminds me of the Mike Harris government. This is all the same thing. They strip out the protections that are put in place. And then what happens is we have, then they lose, the next election they lose, and then someone's got to come in and make all the hard decisions to put these things back in, fight all the fights, fight all the fight back. So I think Maureen's right. I mean, anybody who's in politics at the municipal level will know how much interference a government that says it respects municipalities, it respects local government, conservation authorities, blah 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 blah, and yet they have been completely stripped of rights around planning and finally the omnibus bill that was announced last week is cleaning up some of the messes around MZOs, which thank God. I mean, what a absolutely ruthless tool that was used by this government. And the pushback they got from people.
To the earlier point about weakening the environmental thing, especially with the conservation authorities. Well, I, for one, am not going to invest in floodplain estates, but there will be developers who are ready to do this. And this is why the conservation authorities had those powers. It wasn't a whole lot of power. It was to say, no, that area floods. Like, maybe every 6 years, maybe every year, we don't. But you can't build there. And they said, well, maybe we can, maybe we can get part of the grid. Maybe, who knows for sure. And in weakening regulations, I'll just go back. I think Mark earlier referenced the Harris government. And, the biggest deregulation thing there that had the biggest impact was water deregulation in Walkerton. And people died, babies got sick permanently. Like, it's just unbelievable for lack of a proper regulation and oversight.
Yeah, it's painful because it's not just about, red tape or building Ontario, yay, build, look what's happening here. There are consequences. There's a reason why these regs are put in place in the first place. There's a reason why there's a protection of the watershed. It's not just because people like to go and hug trees and have a nice vista in their backyard. It's because we need that ground. You look at cities like Houston that paved over their floodplains and how they have to deal with storms. I was there once when we thought there was going to be an evacuation because a storm was rolling in and they'd lost their ability to soak up that water. And here we are talking about, a fire season like last summer, which was, catastrophic for air quality in Canada. We remember New York City being yellow because of our fire season. We're talking about real environmental crisis happening. And I got to say, when I wake up to hear that Doug Ford is still looking to carve into the Greenbelt, and I'm hearing the head of the United Nations environmental say humanity has 2 years to fix the planet before, I don't know what, AI helps us out. I don't know what the solution is. But I mean, Mark, I saw you post something that said, I don't know whether to laugh or cry anymore. I mean, how does it feel for you?
It's perplexing in this modern age that we still have governments who are rolling the dice on climate change. And despite all of the evidence in front of us, we look at the like, I can just give you some stats. Like in the last 10 years, the amount of claims that have come out of from catastrophic weather events, which are induced by climate change, and I don't care what anybody else said, they are induced by climate change, have increased 100%. We are now at over $3 billion a year in natural disaster losses. So what people don't understand is this is going to hit them in the pocketbook when they look at what's happening in the States, in Florida, in Texas, in California. They pay home insurance in Florida is $6,000 to $8,000 for a regular home. You can still get insurance here and they have to go to public backed insurers of last resort just to serve people. They are gambling with the future and in this kowtowing to the development community, which does not want to change. They've invested in these lands, they've speculated, and they want the fucking payday. And hell, get out of my way. Good for you. Let's get all these these environmentalists out of the way, and screw the consumer when they're trying to get insurance 5 years from now, and the insurer says, "Guess what? You're in a flood zone. You can't even get insurance." But it's all in this moment. Like the planning is just I'm watching this in real time, and that's why I say I don't know. Like I watch the markets. I'm a capitalist. Right? I work in the insurance industry, right? I'm not a tree hugger. I'm trying to tell people, like, you're gonna pay. So if you're opposed to the carbon tax, you're opposed to anything that has to do with, you think climate change is a joke, open your wallet and start paying, because you're paying for it now. Crops, drought, everything's gonna happen. And this is why I say I don't know. I'm just like, I feel like I'm living in Looneyville.
Oh, it feels like it. There's a community in Arizona. I was listening to a documentary that's trucking water from Canadian lakes down there, right? Because they've dried.
Alberta is trucking water in. Alberta's going to have a massive drought this year, and they have no water. They're already putting in rules to protect water resources, to restrict the use of water. They are going to run out of water this
Yeah,
summer. You
I mean,
watch.
the climate crisis is here right now, and you've just made a very cogent and compelling argument, Mark, about why the Ford government dancing around with these developers and avoiding fourplexes and density and all the other shit that he's up to make a dime for his donors is causing great harm now and for the future. And I kind of feel like the argument you made could also apply to healthcare and investing in the opioid poisoning crisis. In other words, if you're not going to invest in these crises that are mounting around us because you and your buddies you and your pals just want to make a fast buck, it is going to get so much more expensive to live in Ontario than it already is.
One thing got me this week, and I don't want to put the two of you on the spot because I'll admit I did not know the name of Ontario's Environment Minister, Andrea Khanjin, and she's the MPP for the Barrie area. And people who called her office last week seeking shelter were referred to this man who is setting up on his property a for-profit homeless encampment. I never thought I'd hear those words. I'm not quite sure what it involves, but this is now her. She says she had nothing to do with it. This was a mistake by her office. They will stop referring people to this particular man who was going to set up this, let me say it again, for-profit homeless encampment. This was being referred to, people were being referred to this, people seeking shelter in the Barrie area were being referred to this by their local MP, who happens to be, MPP, who happens to be Ontario's Environment Minister. That loops that all around in just such a sad, sad way. I have nothing else to add. I just can't add to that.
Do you know what, Keith? I'm kind of glad I hadn't heard this fresh hell until I'm with YouTube, because I swear to God, if I'd heard it on the weekend, I would have, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, it doesn't surprise me because we have seen this model create a crisis, make it absolutely push it to the outer extreme of cruelty, and then find ways to profit off of it. We've seen that with, eviscerating healthcare funding and then setting up private nursing agencies and taking 3 times the tax dollars to pay these private nurses. Who benefits? We've seen that with deregulating or the ability to sue these long-term care homes, and we've seen the prices skyrocket in families without any kind of mechanism and feeling like they're being totally taken advantage of as seniors. I mean, we have seen this government cause crisis and exacerbate existing challenges to profit. So it doesn't surprise me on one level. On another level, I feel like throwing up, because the idea that someone now is going to make money off of the homeless situation, honestly, I'm so angry about it. I'm going to hold my words. Mark, to you.
We probably don't have a lot more time, but I just wanted to mention a couple more scandals that really burned me in the last few weeks that I think speak to exactly what you're talking about. We learned last week or the week before that the Premier's office, the number of staff in the Premier's office has increased by 46%, from 4.7 million to 6. They now have 48 people. When Wynne was in power, there were 31. Those are 48 people that are making 6-figure salaries, while we're having MPPs give people advice towards a for-profit homeless encampment. It speaks to the whole. I think the equilibrium is in government is out of skew.
Where is their humanity? I'm sorry, I can't hold it.
Right.
Where is their humanity? What the fuck is that? To say to people, you have absolutely nothing, and we as a government are using tax dollars that could help you to build fucking super spa parking lots for $500 million for some rich group of friends? I don't know who the hell is going to use that Thermospa Ontario place, but I sure know the people who could use that taxpayer dollars to save them from being exposed all night and going hungry. So the idea that this government, that a member of this government is referring people who are calling her for help to a for-profit homeless center. I mean, I can't. Guys, I can't. What happened? How is every member of that PC caucus not saying, what have I become? What do I represent? Who the hell do I work for? Because it sure isn't the people of Ontario. You are hurting a generation of people and their families, and the cruelty looks like it's the point. Sorry.
And they're spending 35% more than the former Wing government. They have put they're spending more. This is the irony of all of this, is they are actually spending more money and getting less for it. Where is this money going? They are spending way more money. And I always think, I remember the end of 2018, the debt and deficit broke. Oh, the deficit. You're saddling our children with debt and deficit. Blah, 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 blah. They're all fucking silent now. Nobody's talking about debt and deficit anymore. Oh, it's okay when the conservatives do it, but when anybody else does it, they're spending 35% more, and we have people living on the fucking streets. We have people standing on the corner begging for change. We have hospitals closing down in rural communities. We have a healthcare crisis. They are spending 35% more in the budget. Where is it going?
The FAO said it's certainly not going to healthcare. Ontario is the lowest per capita in Canada by about 50. That was this week. By about 15% on average across Canada, Ontario spends that much less on healthcare per person. Why? We've got the money. They're spending like drunken liberals. They've had increases every year in revenues. This year, a $10 billion deficit when they were projecting 3.1. Now, a lot of that is to pay for those wage settlements that they've had to pay because they froze wages when they shouldn't have for 3 years, knowingly with all the warnings ahead of time. But still, a $10 billion deficit. These are not fiscal conservatives by any stretch of the imagination. They may try to get to balance by the next budget, but I'm not even sure that's a big goal for them. They just want to spend for all their key projects. But as Mark, where's it going for and to your point, the compassion, the humanity? Can't we at least have some pilot projects that direct some funds directly to these people that need the help the most? See what works and what doesn't work. We've got enough communities struggling that we can try various projects, and a lot of local ideas are there to be helped, or to offer help if they can get the funding and support from the province.
Well,
I'm just not getting it.
we had a pilot sorry guys, but we had a pilot project called Basic Income. Working, and the premier promised before he first became premier he would not cut it, and it's one of the first things that he cut. A promise he broke immediately. So it's a war on the poor, guys. There's no other way to say it. Every policy that I've seen this government lean into has had pernicious and deleterious effects on the people who have the least, and all the scandals that they're caught up in are to private profit their pals. I mean,
it's Groundhog Day. It's Groundhog Day all over again. Mike Harris 2.0. Doug Ford. They did exactly. Remember the war on the poor, the tuna, Tabuchi tuna,
dented tuna cans,
tuna cans, the cutting back on social assistance, the cutting back on ODSP, all of those things. Get out, get a job. That whole, it's totally misunderstanding that we have everybody who can work is working. There are so many jobs. The people who need help are not getting the supports they need, and it's basically just, oh well. And I don't know how the public doesn't I don't know what they're seeing. I don't think I've ever seen a time in my life where I've seen this much poverty, this much despair. And whose fault is it? Sure, it's Trudeau's fault. Sure, but it's Doug's fault. And I think that they are banking on Trudeau taking all of the blame for the current situation that's going on, and Doug's just going to ride it and not do anything. But like he said, where, I don't know who said it, but where are the true conservatives? Where are the compassionate conservatives?
Yeah, well, they're not. They're cruel conservatives now. They've officially lost that moniker. There is no compassionate conservatism that we're seeing any evidence of with this Ford government. And I have to say that when Ford, so Trudeau, not enough housing stock, large immigration targets, he owns trying to get those builds done. And I've said that 1,000 times. What I also know to be true is that removing rent controls led to a 900+ spike in renovictions, a percentage of renovictions, almost 1,000% increase in Hamilton, right? People are on the street that were housed before. They might have been living in poverty, but they were living under a roof. They have now lost that roof, and now they're under a tent. Okay, that's got a lot to do with this premier and rent controls. And ODSB, when you can't get a room in Toronto with your ODSB check, how are you supposed to get shelter and food? It's absolutely insane. So a lot of this is on Doug Ford. And how dare he try to block funding from the federal government, who is at least scrambling to catch up and help people. It's disgusting. Keith, is there any other scandal that you wanted to touch on in this? Because you always have the great list for us. And I know we've gone on a couple of good tangents this time.
Just a quick one again, just a very minor thing. We know how this government seems to love Shoppers Drug Mart and having little deals with them and helping them out in any possible way they can in Loblaws.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out there was a physician wanted to open a family medicine clinic in a shopping plaza. And the only other tenant in the plaza was Shoppers Drug Mart, who had absolute right of veto power and vetoed that doctor opening a family practice in the plaza. How is that helping anybody? I mean, this is a doctor wanting to set up and it was shut down or before it even got off the ground. This kind of thing has got to stop. Come on.
Let me guess. Is Loblaws going to open up clinics where they have?
Yes, of course they are.
All right. We're going to be
of course they are.
They're
making
3
minor
times
fortunes.
more. So thank you for bringing that up. And you know what? There was some good reporting by Health Watch Canada that exposed like extra calls on the taxpayer dime to people to check their prescription. I mean, we're watching our healthcare system get privatized in the most obnoxious ways. So there's a lot to be upset about here, guys, in Ontario. And I always appreciate that you bring your passion, you bring your candor, because when I watch those ads by Ford, whether they're PC party donors, that way I feel like we're paying one way or another anyway, or whether they are straight off the tax rolls, they feel like gaslighting to so many people who look around this province and look at the record of this premier and his policies and say, there's no way you're that guy. There's no way that you see me or you see the people in this province who are suffering and in fear and have high levels of stress and are quitting their healthcare jobs en masse and are going through all of these things. You're not the guy that is running this province. You're somebody else in those ads, someone that I don't believe in, I don't understand, I can't connect with, and who is not helping the people of Ontario. So I appreciate that you guys come on the OShow, give your time and your passion to try to set the record straight for people so that they know that they're not the crazy ones, right? that I'm stealing a line from the Bulwark in the US, but you know, we're not crazy. When we watch those ads, we're being gaslit to make us feel crazy. In fact, this government is benefiting the wealthy at the expense of the poor. And we've got many, many examples and evidence of that through all the scandals. Thank you so much, Keith Leslie, former journalist at Queen's Park, who, as you know, and Mark, who worked at Queen's Park and also former journalist, as you said, you've never seen a time like this where Ontario seemed to have so many crises happening. And I think that's a fair assessment. And I hope that this government can be held to account. We'll certainly keep on it here on the OShow. Thank you for watching and subscribing. I never know which show's coming next most of the time because it depends on what happens, and there's a lot going on. So thank you for watching. Check back episodes and take care. We'll see you next time on the OShow.
When you care about current affairs, it's on the OShow. And when you want to get clear what's going on here, it's on the OShow. If you like to stay in the know, tune yourself into the OShow. It's the OShow. Laura Babock's the OShow. With a lot of great guests, she puts them to the test on the OShow. There's no doubt they'll be calling them out on the OShow. Stand for something or fall for it all. Ontario, hear the call on the OShow. It's a podcast, the OShow. Laura Babock's the OShow. Stay informed with the OShow, OShow.